Welcome everyone to installment number 3 of Bible Engagement Coaching. And let me say this right out of the gate. I invited you, the first one of these, that you are more than welcome to email me questions or comments or suggestions at how I can make this better. My goal is to make these things as helpful as they possibly can be to get to the goal of making Bible engagement something that you feel equipped to do for a lifetime after you're through this. That would be awesome. So you can ask questions or make comments, make suggestions or whatever. My email address is Brett Nicholson, spell my name with one T, Brett Nicholson at onelifechurch.org, or you can message me on Facebook. Now please keep it on topic around either the text of the Bible book that we happen to be in, or just any of the comments that I've made here so we can get to the mission. Now what I want to do is always going to follow a basic pattern. The first thing, I want to use the first half to offer something very practical that would apply to any book of the Bible and just kind of going forward. The second part, I want to deal with the passage that we're actually looking at, and we're looking at the book of 2 John right now, so I'll get to that in just a moment. But the practical thing I would like to pass along this time around, something that was very helpful for me and very liberating, and that is learn your style. Learn your style. And that means your learning style. The Bible engagement, Bible reading is a learning process, and we all have different styles of learning. Professional educators know this. They know that some of us are wired to learn in different ways. And I've heard of I've always thought of there's 3 learning styles. Some lists say there are 4. Some lists say there's like 8. But I don't know all the different ones, but I do know that there are different ones. I break it down this way. Some of you are very visual in your learning. You need charts, graphs, you need things to look at. And that's why I suggested to you the Bible Project. TheBibleProject.com is a place where you can go and you can watch videos that teach you about the Bible. They intro every single book. I asked you to do the intro to 2nd and 3rd John as an assignment for today because they give you the background. They also do word studies. They do theme studies in a way that's visually stimulating. Also, here's another thing visual learners can do. The Bible itself is very picturesque in how it communicates. It just is. It uses a lot of very mental imagery. Think about the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd. He leads me beside still quiet waters. It's very picturesque. Jesus was very visual in how he taught. Think about this. He would have been outside a lot of the time. And when he says, consider the birds of the air or the lilies of the field, well, if you're a visual learner, consider the birds of the air. Go out by your window and find a bird and look at it for a while. And I'm not just trying to be cute, because when he would have taught that, he was outside. It was a Sermon on the Mount, and people would have looked. He probably pointed to a flock of birds that were out there or flowers that they could see right there because those things make things more real. So if you're a visual learner, think about how you can be more visual with the Bible. Now, I'm an auditory learner, more on that in a second. There's also kinesthetic. Kinesthetic is action-oriented. I had a friend of mine, and this may work for some of you. A friend of mine, pastor I used to work with, he noticed in the Old Testament, way back there, I forget, it's in Deuteronomy, I think, where God required a king of Israel. Anytime you became the king of Israel, you were required to do this, that you had to write down your own copy of the law. That's the first 5 books of the Bible. You had to write down your own copy. And my friend asked a very good question. Wonder why I had him do that. And so he decided to try it. And he loved the book of Proverbs, and so he said, I'm going to write out in longhand the book of Proverbs. And he said it was life revolutionary. For some reason, that's what engaged his mind better than any other thing. And he loved it so much that he ended up writing down the entire Bible in his own longhand over years. That's just what he did as his fundamental practice. Maybe that's for you. If you think you're kind of more of a hands-on type person, sit down with the Bible and write it out longhand. And write it down 2 John, because you could do it in a pretty quick time. That's an example of kinesthetic learning. Now, I'm an auditory learner. Now, I would highly recommend it, if I haven't already, I don't think I have, downloading the app, the U version, Y-O-U version of the Bible. Because first of all, they give you all kinds of translations. They give you reading plans. It's a huge resource. But they also have an auditory feature where I've learned to when you're sitting in your car, you got to go to the store or something, put the Bible on, listen to the book of 2 John. And listen to it being read. I'm an auditory learning. For some reason, whenever I hear it read, it just goes in better, and I notice things that I don't otherwise. Now that gets me to I know my style. I'm auditory first, visual second. And so here's my way of engaging with the Bible every day, is I need to be walking around. I read books all the time. I don't mind sitting and reading, but for some reason, with my devotional time with the Bible, I need to be walking around. I pace back and forth. I just need that activity. And then I read it out loud to myself. I've done that ever since I was in college. That may not be for you, but some of you, if you did that, it would be kind of the trick that would just help you engage. In other words, it's liberating because it's not saying you have to sit in a chair and read silently and get sleepy, and just find and keep working for it. I found a website called mindtools.com that you can learn your learning style. And there's a lot of websites out there. You can do a little test and it'll kind of suggest to you what your learning style is. Now with that said, okay, part 2. We started last time, your assignment was to learn about the book of 2 John. We are going to own 2 John. Remember, the key to Bible study is there's 66 books in the library. Go for one book at a time and just decide you're going to own that book, become an expert on that book, really know it, really understand it, forget the rest for now. Just own the book of 2 John. And I picked it because it's very brief. It's I think it's the most brief. It's 13 verses. And then we're going to go on to 3 John, which is very brief as well. And the reason we did that is we said, okay, we're going to start small and go for daily. So I invited you to watch the Bible Project's intro about these books, and then to read the whole book, the whole 13 verses. And I would highly encourage you to do that, because the second rule, or not really rule, but principle I want to give you to help you when it comes to understanding the Bible is, we said, listen. And I want to kind of take that idea one more step. Listen. And what I meant by listen was, look at the Bible as you've got something to listen to. When you go to the Bible, I think one of the reasons people stumble over it is because they're looking for it to do something that it wasn't even designed to do. They look at it as it's God's word. Well, it almost like it's a magic book or something. And so they're expecting, they're kind of pulling for, answer this question, or I've got this situation in my life and I need answers to this or that, the other thing. And God will do that, but the Bible's design is to communicate something that you need to listen to. And so your first job is to say, I'm going to go as a listener, and I'm going to go as a learner. Now listening, and here's the key I want you to get. Listening involves 2 things. Number 1, paying attention. Pay attention. A professor of mine in college used to say, the key to Bible interpretation, the first law is pay attention. And then the second one is listening, is flow of thought. Flow of thought. So listening, first of all, involves pay attention. Now, what you want to do when you pay attention, and why I had you watch that background stuff, is because you always want, as a listener, you want to understand what the original people were hearing, what the original writer was trying to communicate, and what the original people were hearing. That's why it's very important to know that the book of 2 John has a context. Context is king to listening. You really have to understand the original context. The book of 2 John was written by the same guy that wrote 1 John and 3 John. And there was a particular situation going on. There were people who rejected the faith. There were people who were rejecting the idea that Jesus really did come in physical flesh as God in the flesh. And they were out spreading a lot of bad stuff. And so he's writing a church, and he's saying, hey, don't do this. Keep your eye on the prize. Keep your eye on the main thing. And then if you know that, just imagine yourself listening as someone back then, 2,000 years ago. What would you have heard? How would you have listened? And then pay attention to what he says by listening to his flow of thought. That's why I highly recommend you read whole chunks at a time, and maybe even read out loud or listen in your car, because flow of thought's very important. Because a lot of times I think we kind of do the Bible a disservice by just grabbing for verses. We're just looking for verses. You can get to verses, but get to them first by paying attention to the flow of thought. And that's another reason I picked this short book. You can read the entire book in one sitting. What are the things that you hear? What are the things that you note? And what your assignment is read the entire book again and just listen for key thoughts. Some of it may go over your head, some of it may be irrelevant, some of it may kind of sound kind of strange, but what observations do you have? What kind of thoughts really stand out? There's a few key sentences. In other words, don't try to get it to do something it's not designed to do. Just listen for what it is doing and mark those thoughts, and then we'll pick it up again tomorrow.